Brutus's ears perked up at the unusual sound. The massive Rottweiler was patrolling the edge of Penelope Carter's property, as he did every morning, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his glossy black and tan coat. The morning mist hung low over the meadow that separated Penelope's modest farmhouse from the main road, casting an ethereal glow across the countryside. The sound came again, a faint whimper that most humans would have missed entirely. Brutus froze, his head cocked to one side, keen ears working to pinpoint the source. There it was again, coming from the direction of the old oak tree near the gate. With purposeful strides, the Rottweiler moved toward the sound, each step deliberate and cautious. As he neared the massive tree, the whimpering grew clearer. Brutus's nose twitched as he detected an unfamiliar scent, milk, powder, and something distinctly human, yet different from the adults he knew. There, nestled against the gnarled roots of the ancient oak, sat a cardboard box. It was unremarkable in appearance, the kind used to pack groceries, except for the small blanket visible at its edge. Brutus approached slowly, his powerful body tense with alertness. When he reached the box, he peered inside and let out a low, concerned whine. A baby lay inside, impossibly tiny and wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. The infant's face was flushed from crying, tiny fists waving in distress. Beside the child was a crumpled note and a small stuffed lamb. Brutus knew instinctively that something was wrong. This small human didn't belong here, unattended in the cool morning air. He turned toward the farmhouse and let out a series of deep, urgent barks, a sound Penelope had never heard from him before. Inside the farmhouse, Penelope Carter jolted awake at the unfamiliar barking. In all the years she'd owned Brutus, she'd never heard him make such insistent sounds. Even during the rare occasions when strangers approached the property, his warnings were controlled and measured. This was different, almost desperate. Penelope threw back her covers, her long auburn hair tumbling around her shoulders as she hurried to pull on her robe. "Brutus!" she called, rushing to the window. She could see her dog at the edge of the property, his massive form moving back and forth between the old oak tree and the house, as if trying to lead her eye to something important. Heart pounding, Penelope slipped her feet into her boots and rushed outside, not bothering with a coat despite the morning chill. As she approached, Brutus ran to meet her, circling back immediately toward the tree, his message clear. "Follow me." "What is it, boy?" Penelope asked, picking up her pace. When she reached the old oak, her breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered, dropping to her knees beside the box. The baby inside had stopped crying and was now looking up at her with wide, curious eyes that seemed impossibly aware for one so young. Penelope reached in with trembling hands and gently lifted the infant, cradling the tiny body against her chest. "Who would do this?" she murmured, her voice breaking. She spotted the note in the box and picked it up with her free hand, unfolding it awkwardly while keeping the baby secure. "Please take care of my daughter. I can't give her what she needs. Her name is Lily. I'm sorry." That was all. No explanation, no contact information, not even a signature. Just a desperate plea from someone who felt they had no other choice. Brutus pressed against Penelope's side, his warm body offering comfort as he gazed up at the small bundle in her arms. His protective instinct had already engaged. This tiny human was now under his guardianship. "We need to call the sheriff," Penelope said, though her arms tightened instinctively around the baby. She looked down at the infant's face, perfectly formed features, a dusting of dark hair, and those extraordinary eyes. "Lily," she whispered, testing the name. "Who left you here, little one?" With Brutus following closely, Penelope carried Lily into the farmhouse, her mind racing. She placed the baby on the sofa, surrounding her with cushions to prevent her from rolling, then reached for her phone. Her fingers hovered over the keypad as conflicting emotions washed over her, concern for the child, anger at whoever had abandoned her, and an unexpected surge of protectiveness. Brutus settled himself on the floor beside the sofa, his vigilant eyes never leaving the baby. There was something in his posture that Penelope recognized, the same unwavering devotion he'd shown her since the day she'd rescued him from the shelter, where he'd been discarded after his previous owners deemed him too intense. Sheriff's Department. How can I help you? The voice on the other end of the line pulled Penelope back to reality. This is Penelope Carter, out on Willow Creek Road, she began, her voice steadier than she expected. I've found a baby. Someone left her in a box near my property. The next hours passed in a blur. Sheriff Rosalie Adams arrived with a deputy and a paramedic. The baby, Lily, was examined and pronounced healthy, though slightly dehydrated. Questions were asked, the area was searched, and the note was bagged as evidence. We'll need to take her to the hospital for a full checkup, Sheriff Adams explained, her kind eyes meeting Penelope's. Then social services will take over while we try to locate the mother. What will happen to her? Penelope asked, surprising herself with how much she cared about the answer. Foster care, most likely, the sheriff replied, unless we can find her family. Throughout the examination, Brutus had remained vigilant, his massive body tense as strangers handled the baby he'd found. When the paramedic reached to take Lily, the Rottweiler let out a low, rumbling growl, not threatening but clearly communicating his concern. Brutus, Penelope said softly, placing a hand on his broad head. It's okay. They're helping her. The dog subsided, but his eyes tracked every movement as Lily was wrapped in a fresh blanket and prepared for transport. There was something almost human in his understanding of the situation, a depth of comprehension that went beyond typical canine awareness. That's some dog you've got, Sheriff Adams commented, watching Brutus with a mixture of wariness and admiration. Not many Rottweilers would be so gentle around an infant. He's special, Penelope agreed, her hand still resting on his warm fur. He's the one who found her, you know. If he hadn't alerted me. She let the sentence trail off, unwilling to contemplate what might have happened to the baby if Brutus hadn't discovered her. As the paramedic carried Lily toward the ambulance, Brutus's whine of distress surprised everyone, including Penelope. The dog rose to his feet, moving to block the doorway, his eyes fixed on the baby. Brutus, Penelope said more sharply this time, move aside, boy. The Rottweiler hesitated, looking between his owner and the infant with clear conflict in his expressive eyes. Finally, he stepped aside, but the soft whine that escaped him tugged at Penelope's heart. Would it be possible? Penelope began, then faltered, unsure if her request would sound ridiculous. Would it be possible for me to come to the hospital, just to make sure she's okay? Sheriff Adams exchanged a glance with the paramedic, then nodded slowly. I don't see why not. You're a key witness, after all. Thank you, Penelope whispered, relief flooding through her. She turned to Brutus, kneeling to meet his gaze. I'll be back soon, boy. You stay here and guard the house. The Rottweiler seemed to understand, though his eyes followed the baby until she disappeared from view. When Penelope returned hours later, exhausted and emotionally drained, Brutus was waiting by the door, his entire body signaling his anxiety. She's okay, Penelope assured him, sinking to the floor as the dog pressed against her, seeking reassurance. She's safe at the hospital. They're taking good care of her. But as she sat there, stroking Brutus's fur, Penelope couldn't shake the image of Lily's face, so innocent, so trusting, so completely dependent on the kindness of strangers. Nor could she forget the stark reality presented by Sheriff Adams. Once medically cleared, Lily would enter the foster care system, becoming another statistic in an overwhelmed bureaucracy. I wish we could help her, Brutus, she murmured, burying her face in the dog's warm neck. I wish we could do more than just find her and hand her over. Brutus nuzzled her cheek, his brown eyes seeming to hold wisdom beyond his species. In that moment, a seed was planted in Penelope's mind, a wild, impractical idea that she tried to dismiss but found impossible to ignore. What if they could do more? What if finding Lily wasn't the end of their connection, but the beginning? The thought should have frightened her. Penelope had built her life around independence and simplicity after escaping a relationship that had nearly broken her. Her small farm, her freelance graphic design work, and Brutus were all she needed, or so she'd always believed. Yet, as she prepared for bed that night, Lily's face kept appearing in her mind, along with a question that refused to be silenced. Why had the baby been left specifically at her property, at the edge of a small town with countless other possible locations. Was it random chance, or was there something more to the story? The note had been brief, but Penelope couldn't shake the feeling that there was meaning in its simplicity, in the choice of location, in the name the mother had given her daughter. Lily, the flower of purity and rebirth. Beside her, Brutus let out a soft huff as if reading her thoughts. Penelope scratched behind his ears, grateful for his solid presence. "Tomorrow," she promised him, "we'll go check on her, just to make sure she's okay." She didn't acknowledge, even to herself, that checking on Lily might be the first step down a path that would change everything. Instead, she drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of tiny hands and watchful eyes, of yellow blankets and mysterious notes, and of pathways leading into an uncertain future. Meanwhile, Brutus remained awake, his head raised and ears alert, as if standing guard not just over Penelope but over the memory of the tiny human who had appeared on their doorstep like a sign from the universe, a sign they both, in their different ways, had recognized. Morning arrived with a sense of purpose that Penelope hadn't felt in years. She dressed quickly, fed Brutus, and prepared to visit the hospital where baby Lily was being kept. The Rottweiler followed her movements with keen attention, his posture changing the moment she reached for her car keys. "You can't come, Brutus," she explained, kneeling to stroke his powerful neck. "They don't allow dogs in hospitals." Brutus let out a low whine, his eyes fixed on hers with an intelligence that sometimes unnerved her. For a moment, Penelope could have sworn he understood not just her words, but the deeper currents of her thoughts. "I'll be back soon," she promised, scratching behind his ears, "and I'll tell Lily you asked about her." The drive to Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital took 20 minutes, winding through countryside that was beginning to shake off winter's grip. Spring flowers dotted the roadside and the trees were budding with new life. Penelope found herself rehearsing what she would say, not just to the hospital staff, but to the social worker she expected to meet. At the hospital, Penelope was directed to the neonatal unit where she found Sheriff Adams speaking with a tall woman in a crisp pantsuit. The sheriff waved her over. "Ms. Carter, this is Amanda Lockhart from Child Protective Services. She's handling Lily's case." Amanda offered a professionally warm smile. "Sheriff Adams tells me you're the one who found the baby. That must have been quite a shock." "Actually, my dog found her," Penelope corrected, surprising herself with how important this distinction felt. "Brutus, he's a Rottweiler. He alerted me." "A Rottweiler?" Amanda's professionally composed expression slipped momentarily. "That's unexpected." "Brutus is special," Penelope replied, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "He was incredibly gentle with Lily, protective even." Sheriff Adams nodded in confirmation. "The dog was remarkable, seemed genuinely concerned for the baby." "Well," Amanda said, recovering her professional demeanor, "the doctors say Lily's in excellent health considering the circumstances. We'll be placing her in emergency foster care this afternoon while we search for her family." "So quickly?" Penelope asked, her heart sinking unexpectedly. "I was hoping to see her before she left." Amanda checked her watch. "I suppose that could be arranged. The paperwork isn't quite ready, and her temporary foster parent won't be here for another hour." Penelope followed Amanda to the nursery, where Lily lay in a standard hospital bassinet. The baby's eyes were open, taking in the world with that same unsettling awareness Penelope had noticed yesterday. When Penelope approached, Lily's tiny hands reached upward, as if in recognition. "She remembers me," Penelope whispered, reaching out to stroke the baby's soft cheek. "Infants can recognize faces surprisingly early," Amanda commented, though her tone suggested polite skepticism. A nurse entered the room carrying a clipboard. "Ms. Lockhart, there's an issue with the foster placement. Could you step outside for a moment?" As Amanda followed the nurse out, Penelope found herself alone with Lily. She gently lifted the baby into her arms, marveling at how natural it felt. Lily settled against her chest with a contented sigh. "Your friend Brutus was worried about you," Penelope murmured. "He wanted to come visit, but they have strict rules about dogs in hospitals." Lily made a small gurgling sound, her tiny hand wrapping around Penelope's finger with surprising strength. "I wonder who your mother is," Penelope continued softly, and why she chose my property to leave you. Was it random, or is there a connection I'm missing?" The door opened, and Amanda returned, her expression troubled. "We have a problem. The foster home we arranged has had an emergency, a burst pipe and water damage. We're trying to find an alternative placement, but it might take a few hours." A wild, impulsive thought seized Penelope. "What about me?" "Excuse me?" Amanda blinked in surprise. "Could I take Lily, just temporarily until you find a permanent foster home?" Amanda's professional mask slipped again. "Ms. Carter, becoming a foster parent requires training, home studies, background checks." "But this is an emergency situation, right?" Penelope pressed. "And I did find her. Doesn't that count for something?" "It's highly irregular," Amanda began. Sheriff Adams, who had been standing quietly in the doorway, stepped forward. "I can vouch for Penelope's character, and I've seen her property. It's safe, clean, and suitable for a child." Amanda looked between them, her internal conflict visible. There would need to be an expedited background check at minimum, and a home inspection today, and it would only be for a few days, until we can arrange proper foster placement. "I understand," Penelope said quickly, surprised by the intensity of her desire to make this happen. "I'm willing to do whatever's necessary." Hours later, after a flurry of paperwork, phone calls, and a hasty inspection of her farmhouse, Penelope found herself driving home with Lily, securely fastened in a car seat the hospital had provided. The entire situation felt surreal. 24 hours ago, she'd been a woman living peacefully alone with her dog. Now she was temporarily responsible for a newborn. As Penelope pulled into her driveway, she could see Brutus watching from the window, his massive silhouette unmistakable. "We're home, Lily," she said softly. "And there's someone very special waiting to meet you properly." Carrying the baby carrier in one hand and a hospital bag of supplies in the other, Penelope approached her front door with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. How would Brutus react to having Lily in the house? Despite his gentle behavior yesterday, she knew Rottweilers had a reputation, however undeserved. The moment she opened the door, Brutus was there, his entire body quivering with restrained energy. He sniffed the air, catching Lily's scent, and let out a soft whine of recognition. "Gentle, Brutus," Penelope cautioned, setting the carrier down where the dog could see the baby. Brutus approached slowly, his movements deliberate and careful. He sniffed at Lily's tiny form, then looked up at Penelope, his expression almost questioning. "Yes, she's staying with us for a little while," Penelope explained, feeling only slightly foolish for having a conversation with her dog. "We need to take care of her." To her amazement, Brutus settled himself beside the carrier, his massive head resting on his paws, his eyes fixed protectively on Lily. It was as if he understood his role perfectly. Guardian, protector, watchful friend. That night, as Lily slept in the makeshift crib Penelope had created from a dresser drawer, a temporary solution until she could purchase proper baby furniture, Brutus refused to leave the baby's side. He positioned himself directly beneath the dresser, his alert ears catching every small sound the infant made. Penelope, exhausted but unable to sleep, found herself wondering again about the mystery of Lily's abandonment. Why her property? Why that specific morning? And who was the mother who had felt desperate enough to leave her child, yet caring enough to provide a name and a note? As dawn broke, Penelope was startled awake by the ringing of her phone. She'd fallen asleep in the chair beside Lily's makeshift crib, with Brutus still on guard below. "Miss Carter, this is Amanda Lockhart. There's been a development in Lily's case. I need to come see you right away." Penelope's heart raced as she ended the call. Had they found Lily's mother? Were they coming to take the baby already? She looked down at Brutus, who had raised his head at the sound of her voice. "Something's happening," she told him softly. "I just hope it's good news." Brutus's ears perked forward, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand the weight of the moment. Whatever came next, they would face it together. A woman, a dog, and the mysterious baby who had unexpectedly brought new purpose to their quiet lives. The knock at Penelope's door came precisely at 9 o'clock. Brutus, who had maintained his position beside Lily's makeshift crib, raised his head but didn't move, his self-appointed guardianship apparently outweighing his usual door-greeting duties. Penelope answered to find Amanda Lockhart standing on her porch, accompanied by Sheriff Adams and a young woman Penelope didn't recognize. The stranger's eyes were red-rimmed as if she'd been crying, and she twisted her hands nervously in front of her. "Ms. Carter," Amanda began formally, "this is Rachel Bailey. She has information about Lily." Penelope's heart skipped a beat. "Please come in." As they entered the living room, Rachel's eyes darted around nervously until they landed on Brutus. Her face paled. Is your dog safe?" "Brutus won't hurt you," Penelope assured her, though the Rottweiler was watching the newcomers with intense concentration. "He's actually been Lily's most dedicated guardian." "May I see her?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Penelope hesitated, looking to Sheriff Adams, who nodded slightly. "This way," Penelope said, leading them to the corner where she'd set up Lily's temporary sleeping area. The moment Rachel saw the baby, a small cry escaped her. "She's okay," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's really okay." "Ms. Bailey came to the sheriff's office this morning," Amanda explained. "She has a connection to Lily's case." Rachel wiped her eyes. "I know who Lily's mother is. She's my sister, Olivia." "Where is she?" Penelope asked. "Is she all right?" Rachel shook her head, fresh tears falling. "She's in the hospital. She had complications after giving birth. She's been in a medically induced coma for the past couple of days, but they're bringing her out today. She made me promise to check on the baby if anything happened to her." "But why leave Lily here?" Penelope asked, gesturing around her modest home. "Why not take her to a hospital or fire station?" Rachel took a deep breath. "Because of him," she said, pointing to Brutus, who was watching the interaction with uncanny attentiveness. "My dog?" Penelope's brow furrowed in confusion. "Olivia used to work at the animal shelter in Oak Ridge," Rachel explained. "She was there when you adopted Brutus. She always remembered you because most people wouldn't even look at him, a big, intimidating Rottweiler with behavioral issues in his file. But you took him without hesitation." Memories flooded back to Penelope. The day she'd visited the shelter, still healing from the emotional wounds of her broken relationship. The way the shelter worker had warned her about Brutus, explaining his intense behavior, his protective instincts, his need for an experienced handler. "Your sister was the one who showed me Brutus?" Penelope asked, remembering a quiet young woman with kind eyes. Rachel nodded. "Olivia said you didn't see a dangerous dog. You saw a loyal protector who just needed someone to protect. She never forgot that." "So, when she was in trouble," Penelope began. "She knew if anyone would protect her baby, it would be you and your dog," Rachel finished. "She researched you, found out where you lived. She didn't know what would happen to her after the birth. Her ex-boyfriend, Lily's father, had threatened her. She was scared, and she wanted her baby somewhere safe until she could come for her." Sheriff Adams stepped forward. "We're looking for the ex-boyfriend now. Ms. Bailey has filed charges of domestic abuse and intimidation. He won't be a threat to anyone for a long time." "Will Olivia recover?" Penelope asked, looking down at Lily, seeing her with new understanding. "The doctors are hopeful," Rachel said. "When she wakes up, she'll want to see Lily." Amanda cleared her throat. "Which brings us to the legal considerations. Technically, Lily should go into emergency foster care until her mother is able to care for her." Brutus chose that moment to rise from his position and pad silently to Rachel. He sniffed her carefully, then looked back at Lily as if making a connection. After a moment's consideration, he gave Rachel's hand a gentle lick, then returned to his post beside the baby. "He approves of you," Penelope said with a small smile. "He can tell you're connected to Lily." Rachel's eyes widened. "He's incredible." "I have a suggestion," Sheriff Adams said. "Since Ms. Carter has already been approved for emergency placement, and since we now know this was not an abandonment situation, but a mother seeking protection for her child, perhaps Lily could remain here until Olivia recovers." Amanda frowned. "That's highly sensible," Sheriff Adams interrupted firmly. "Lily is safe and well cared for. She's already bonded with both Ms. Carter and apparently her dog. Moving her now would cause unnecessary trauma, especially since her mother specifically chose this placement." Penelope held her breath, afraid to hope. She looked down at Lily, then at Brutus, who met her gaze with those soulful eyes that seemed to understand everything. Finally, Amanda sighed. I suppose, given the unusual circumstances, we could approve an extended emergency placement, with regular check-ins, of course. Of course, Penelope agreed quickly. And Rachel should visit as often as she wants. Lily should know her family. Rachel's grateful smile was answer enough. 3 weeks later, Penelope's farmhouse buzzed with nervous energy. Olivia Bailey was being released from the hospital, and Penelope had invited her to stay at the farm during her recovery. Brutus sensed the importance of the day, staying unusually close to both Penelope and Lily as they prepared for their guest. What if she doesn't like me? Penelope asked Brutus as she straightened the guest room one final time. What if she thinks I've overstepped by getting so attached to Lily? Brutus huffed in response, nudging her hand with his nose as if to reassure her. The sound of tires on gravel announced Rachel's car. Penelope took a deep breath, lifted Lily from her newly purchased crib, and went to greet Olivia Bailey, the woman who had entrusted her most precious possession to a woman she barely remembered, and a dog with a fearsome reputation. Rachel helped her sister from the car. Olivia was pale and moved slowly, but her eyes were clear and immediately fixed on the baby in Penelope's arms. Lily, she whispered, her voice breaking. Penelope approached, gently transferring the baby to her mother's arms. She's perfect, Penelope said softly. You made the right choice. She's been safe the whole time. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she held her daughter. Thank you, she managed, looking up at Penelope. For everything. You should really thank Brutus, Penelope said, gesturing to the Rottweiler who sat attentively nearby. He found her, and he hasn't left her side since. Olivia carefully knelt, still holding Lily, to meet Brutus at eye level. I knew you would protect her, she told the dog. I remember how gentle you were at the shelter, even when everyone else was afraid of you. Brutus's tail thumped against the ground, and he leaned forward to gently sniff Lily, as if confirming that this newcomer was indeed the baby's rightful guardian. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm at the farmhouse. Olivia grew stronger each day, bonding with her daughter and forming a friendship with Penelope that felt as if it had been meant to be. Rachel visited often, bringing news that Lily's father had been arrested and would face serious charges. Meanwhile, Brutus appointed himself guardian to the entire household, keeping watchful eyes on Lily, accompanying Olivia on her strengthening walks around the property, and still seeking out his usual cuddles with Penelope. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Olivia broached the subject they'd both been avoiding. I'll need to find a place of my own soon, she said. I can't impose on you forever. Penelope felt a pang at the thought of the house without Olivia and Lily. In just a short time they had become family. Brutus, lying at their feet, lifted his head as if sensing the importance of the conversation. What if, Penelope began cautiously, what if you didn't have to leave? Olivia turned to her, surprise evident in her expression. This house is too big for just me and Brutus, Penelope continued. The property needs more attention than I can give it alone, and I've grown rather attached to having a baby around, she smiled. Even with all the crying and diaper changing. Are you suggesting we become roommates? Olivia asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. I'm suggesting we become family, Penelope replied simply, not related by blood, but by choice, by circumstance, by a cardboard box left under an oak tree and a Rottweiler who knew exactly what to do. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I'd like that, she whispered. I'd like that very much. Brutus, as if approving the arrangement, let out a contented sigh and rested his head on his paws. Years passed, and the unusual family that had formed around the abandoned cardboard box flourished. The farmhouse expanded to include a small nursery where Olivia offered childcare services to working parents in the community. Penelope's graphic design business thrived as she incorporated charming illustrations of a certain Rottweiler and baby into her work. Lily grew into a confident child with an extraordinary bond with animals, especially Brutus, who remained her constant companion and protector. Though advancing in age, the Rottweiler maintained his vigilant watch over the growing girl, accompanying her on adventures around the farm and sleeping at the foot of her bed each night. Sheriff Adams became a regular visitor and friend to the household. Rachel found love with a kind veterinarian who had treated Brutus for a minor injury, completing their extended family circle. And on quiet evenings, when Lily asked for the story of how they all came together, the tale was always told with reverence for the profound connections that can form in the most unexpected ways. Between a woman healing from her past, a dog with a fearsome reputation but gentle soul, and a baby left in a cardboard box with nothing but a note and a stuffed lamb. The bravest decision your mother ever made was trusting strangers to care for what she loved most, Penelope would tell Lily. And the smartest decision she made was trusting Brutus. Olivia would always add, sometimes family is made not from shared blood, but from shared courage in moments that matter most. And Brutus, grey around the muzzle but still dignified, would thump his tail in agreement, as if to say that some things in life, like finding those who truly belong with you, are worth protecting with everything you have. In the small town of Oak Ridge, their story became something of a legend. How a Rottweiler's discovery of an abandoned baby led to healing, justice, and the formation of a family bound by love rather than convention. It served as a reminder that second chances, like the best gifts in life, often come in unexpected packages, sometimes even in cardboard boxes beneath old oak trees, guarded by heroes with paws. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.